This is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth. We're here coming at you from Acapulco, Mexico once again, and I am now joined by the one and only Max Igan. Now, Max, I'm glad to be talking to you here in 2019 in particular, a time when the technology is advancing at an incredible rate, and we're soon going to be seeing this expand to a global scale when it comes to this new 5G technology. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Maybe we can get into some of the privacy issues, some of the health issues related to that. But before we get into that, maybe you can start us off with just a general, what is 5G, or perhaps how does 5G differ from what we currently have, 3 and 4G?
Well, when you look at the G, you've got to think of it as just generation. First generation, second generation, third generation, fourth generation. With the fifth generation, it's actually a whole new ballgame. It's not using the same technology. They're switching to military-grade millimeter wave technology. And when you look at this technology, I mean, if you go and look at DARPA reports, come and look at some of the patents that the United States military has put out on what they can do with psychological weapons, all sorts of things, crowd control, active denial, anything you can think of, this is what they can do with 5G. So any type of military application you can think of which has an electromagnetic base, they can do with 5G. And they're putting this out blanket across the population. So when you couple this with everything else they're doing, the nanotech that's in everything, you want to get into that. Just the fact that people have got mobile phones so everybody's tracked, they can say, well, there's Dan Dix, and they can target you for active denial specifically, and they can affect your health, all sorts of things. I mean, anything you can think of they can do with 5G. All you've got to go, like I said, is go and look at the DARPA patents. They put it all out there themselves to tell you.
So what sort of experiments have they done, or have they, and do they even know what some of the adverse health effects may or may not be from this?
Well, that's the thing. They're not running any health tests. Even you can look at Ted Wheeler or Tom Wheeler's speech, who said, from the FCC, said we're not waiting for the standards. They're just going to roll it out. But really, when you look at it, I mean, it boils water. So we've got a lot of water in us. What's it going to do to that? You're going to see an increase in skin cancers, in all sorts of health problems. It affects the food. So how are we going to have true organic food if you've got this millimeter wave everywhere, which is penetrating all the food we're buying in the supermarkets even? So it affects all life forms. It penetrates all this stuff, and it's a very, very dangerous way because it's a millimeter wave.
Well, speaking of all life forms and the fact that this has to control everything on the planet, does it play into the Internet of Things, and is that something that's eventually going to be connected to 5G?
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons that they're saying we need it, because of the Internet of Things, because the enormous amount of bandwidth that this is going to use. You know, if you've got people performing all these transactions all the time and everything's got an IP address, everything you pick up, and you're not using tellers anymore, it's all automatic. It's going to take an enormous amount of bandwidth. So that's the excuse that they're using to roll it out. But, you know, I look at it and the health aspects and everything, what this is going to do to the body, there's underlying ulterior motives. You know, we're being led in a certain direction with all this. And when you look at the whole transhumanist agenda and how they want to merge us with machines and all that sort of stuff, with 5G you're going to find all sorts of health problems people are developing. It's going to be a lot harder to do things in this crumpled old shell, and please transfer me over into one of these. You can see where they'd be able to lead it with people. You know, a lot of kids are going to really like this because they're just stuck in the technology anyway. So, you know, you've got to really step back and look at it. I mean, 5G is dangerous in itself, but it's part of a broader action that's happening, you know, and it's all tied together.
One of the broader agendas that a lot of people talk about in regards to this is the privacy aspect, the surveillance aspect. Can you get into that a little bit? How is it possible that something like this 5G global mesh network can spy and track people, or is that the plan?
Well, it's the plan, and they can do it through social crediting as well. You've got situations now in England. There's 4 new supermarkets that have rolled out in England where all your groceries are watching you as well. So they're socially profiling you. Walgreens and a couple of others. They're socially profiling you while you shop. So when you look at the Chinese social crediting system they've got as well, you know, if they digitize all cash and they socially profile you in every move that you do, track everything you do through all the surveillance cameras, they can suddenly say, look at this Dan Dix guy. He's talking to people and he's saying things that we don't like. So there'll be an algorithm there which will pick up on your profile, pick up on who you're talking to, what you're saying, and it'll just start docking your social credit points. And when your social credit points get below a certain level, you'll find you'll go buy an air ticket one day and you're not qualified for the air ticket, and there's no one you can call. It's just simply the algorithm is determined that you're below on social credit points, and now you are now untrustworthy, and you can't be permitted to travel because you're untrustworthy. This is what they've done in China. There's over 7 million people now on China's credit blacklist who cannot fly planes, they cannot ride on high-tier trains, and some of them can't even rent houses. So they can basically criminalise, this is thought crime, you're saying and doing the wrong thing, and if you're a dissenter who's speaking out against the government, they can limit your social crediting points and limit you from access to the world around you by putting a digital barrier there where it requires permission to do everything. And if you're not up on social credit points and you don't have the permission, you suddenly become an undesirable and you get put into the smart prison because you can't rent a house, you can't travel anywhere, so what can you do? That's the way they do it, you see. So it's basically separating society into two classes, desirables and undesirables, and it will all be determined by algorithms. You won't even need to commit a crime. You've got your clock radio listening to you, you've got your TV watching you, you've got everything listening to what you're saying. You could be in bed having a conversation with your wife and suddenly you say something that the algorithm doesn't like and it determines that Dan Dix is a irresponsible, untrustworthy person and it docks your social credit points, and you don't know until you go to buy something. And then you say, well, what do I do? And the person at the counter says, well, I don't know. The computer says no. They don't know, so they're not to blame. You can tirade all you want and see, well, who can I call? Well, we don't know who to call. You go online, who do I call? There's no one. There's no website. There's nothing, no one that you can call about this.
Well, what sort of limits are to their power here, and how far can they take this? Because if they can track us social credit wise, are they going to take it to the point of manipulating our ideas, our opinions, our emotions, our very beliefs? And is that even possible?
I think they're already doing that if you really look at it. They're certainly manipulating our beliefs, but they can manipulate our emotions through 5G. Again, all you've got to do is go and look at the DARPA patents. There's a file, I think it's called psychoactive weapons, something like that. You'll find it. Just search psychoactive weapons DARPA, and you'll find a PDF which lists all these patents, which tells you what they can do. They can change your emotions. They can change transparent eyelids are sort of the things they're talking about. Transparent eyelids. Itchy eyeballs, so you want to scratch your eyes out, itching on the soles of your feet where you can't scratch, all this sort of stuff they can do. So the patents are off the charts, and these are all official patents, stuff that they've been trying for years, and it's all military grade stuff. And you look at what they did in the Gulf War with what they're calling the voice of God, how they put that message in the Iraqi soldiers to lay down their weapons and march to and give themselves up, and they all got firebombed, and that's on record that they put the voice of God into the head of those soldiers. That's admitted by themselves. So what can they do with us with this 5G technology? Put suggestions in people, control people's emotions, all sorts of stuff. We're electromagnetic beings when it really comes down to it. Everything we experience, you holding that microphone, you can feel that from an electromagnetic signal that goes to your brain that tells you that's what's going on. Everything you see is decoded electromagnetically. We're essentially energy beings. So if they can manipulate that energy, and then you've even got to look at stuff like quantum computing and all the stuff they're doing. If you consider your body, you being an electrical being, and your DNA tuned to a particular frequency that harvests Dan Dix from the surrounding field, there's only really one consciousness. We each harvest a frequency of it. Can they create a quantum computer by mapping your DNA and mimic that signal and then harvest your consciousness into a mainframe, or can they affect your consciousness in the field and seek signals that way? I mean, this is all the stuff that they're experimenting on. It's pretty out there to a lot of people, but as I said, all you've got to do is go and read the DARPA patents, and this is what they're telling you in the mainstream. So what are they not telling us?
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I guess that leads to the obvious question. If this is the case, and it does in fact seem to be, how do we protect ourselves against this moving forward? I mean, when it comes down to frequencies, manipulating, our emotions and our minds through microwave technology on a global mesh system, is it inevitable? Is it stoppable? And how do we, as individuals, protect our minds from this machine?
That's a very difficult question, Dan. It's a very difficult question. Ultimately, what it all comes down to is, we've got to admit the reality and face the reality that the world is run by criminals. There's nothing really wrong with technology, but those who are controlling the direction this technology is going are very bad people. Exhibit A, the Earth. Have a look at the place. And you consider that every problem that we have on this Earth exists because it's legislated to exist. And whether the governments are just a facade that we can get to and there's a working behind that, whatever, but that's still the mechanism we have to deal with. And I really like what's happening in France, actually, the way they're just pulling the whole system down and destroying the infrastructure. And that's really ultimately the only way we're going to combat 5G in the end. As nice as we want to be about it, and as much as we picket and petition and do all these things, these towers, these 5G towers they're putting up are doing harm. They're causing harm. We created a legal system to prevent the causation of harm and to provide remedy when harm is caused. And now our government is using that very legal system to inflict harm upon us, and we're told we can't do anything about it. Well, that's not acceptable. These people were elected by us to manage our infrastructure in a responsible manner. That is the sole purpose of government if it's going to exist at all. And if it doesn't do that, then it has no right. It is invalid. So we need to pull this infrastructure down. We really do. But in order to do that, we can't just be some violent domestic terrorist. You've got to bring this awareness to the people that these towers are doing them damage. You don't need bandwidth that fast. And they're not doing it so you can download movies quickly. They're doing it so they can track every single thing you do and bring in this social crediting system to control even everything you think. That's what they're doing. So we need to raise public awareness of this and pull this infrastructure down before it gets completed.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned France because they joined together on the idea of taking down the speed cameras, and they knocked out upwards of 60% of those cameras, and that's a really interesting collaborative thing that people decide to do. Moving forward, when it comes to 5G, we need to continue to raise awareness. Maybe we can reach that 10% tipping point, as some people often say. And I often look at it as like a pyramidal structure where we're all at the bottom of the base that makes up this thing. But if enough of us that represents one of those bricks says, no, I don't like this, and we step out, it might be able to cause the beginning of a crash and the whole system would just fall apart. So, but at this point, I still think awareness is key.
That's the first step. We need awareness. Like I said, we just can't go out and say, oh, I'm just going to go and pull them all down. You get arrested and the people will be happy that you are. So you've got to raise awareness of what these things are really doing and what this purpose of all this really is. It's not being done for our benefit. Your government is not your friend. People need to understand that. The world is run by criminals. And I can look at this whole international government system as a multinational, multi-generational criminal cabal masquerading as government, which is simply inflicted its mentality over ours, and we need to break out of this cycle and become free again. We really do. We're at a pivotal point, and with so much going on now, it's so easy to bring awareness to people because look what they're doing. So enough is enough. Let's stand up and say something.
One of the easiest things you can do is actually just share this video. Simply click the like button, leave a comment, help trigger the algorithms that are designed to stop this type of info from being seen, and share it. We need to spread the word and get the info out about the dangers of 5G. Now, for anybody who's just coming across your info for the first time, where can they go to learn more from you? What are the links, and where can they go if they want to follow your work?
I've got a website called thecrowhouse.com. You can go there. Also a YouTube channel called The Crow House. But if you go to the crowhouse.com website, you'll find everything you need to find out about me there. There's over 2,000 pages on that website. It's a huge portal of truth. There's no subscriber section. There's nothing to buy. It's all for free. Get the information and share it with whoever will listen.
Fantastic. I strongly encourage you to check it out. Links will be located in the description below. Once again, Max, thanks so much for talking to us.
My pleasure, Dan. Thanks for having me on to chat.
We all want truth. The truth will set you free.